Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the New Mainstream podcast,
where we explore the impact of multicultural consumers on marketing and media.
I'm your host, Mario Carrasco, and co-founder of ThinkNow. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the New Mainstream podcast. I'm your host, Mario Carrasco. Today, I'm speaking to someone who lives at the intersection of consumer behavior, marketing, education, and personal branding. Jim Blair is the Assistant Dean Chair of the Faculty and Associate Professor of Marketing at Eastern Kentucky University. He's a consumer behavior researcher, sports marketing expert, and award-winning educator who uses experiential learning to prepare students for the real world. His work spans everything from marketing campaigns for organizations like the Arthur Ashe Legacy to researching on how authenticity and personal branding help students build meaningful careers, which I'm most excited to talk about. Today, we'll explore about what Jim thinks about personal branding, some of the research, and how it's not just a buzzword or social media game, but a path to authenticity, confidence, and self-actualization. Jim, excited to have you on. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mario. Looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise. So you have a multifaceted journey, educator, publishing a lot, working on personal branding. Before we jump into that, let's start a little bit about your journey. Like, how did you become? How did you get into education, and a little bit about your journey there?
Yeah, absolutely, Mario. So at least when I started off as a college student, I got some early marketing experience working for a summer collegiate baseball team. So for anyone that's interested in working in sports or trying to get their hand into marketing and sales, I highly recommend working for one of these summer collegiate teams or a minor league baseball team. Because if your team is losing, that really shows if you really have like a love for the sport and really want to go to work each day. And also, if you're still able to sell tickets and have that great fan experience, that really shows off the skills that you're able to develop and show off for your future career opportunities. So I really loved working for the Copperheads during my time there. And after I graduated, I worked for a company in Dayton, Ohio called Reynolds and Reynolds. They primarily work with car dealerships, providing them with computer software. So I worked in their marketing research department, and I was earning my MBA at the University of Dayton. And I loved my time at Reynolds and Reynolds, but unfortunately, they were not willing to pay for my MBA, and grad school can be quite costly. So as I was going into my spring semester, I was sitting down at my marketing MBA table with my buddy Phil, who worked for the Dayton Dragons. And then another student was sitting there, and Phil and I were talking, and he was like, Jim, you got some great experience and in sports marketing. You worked for the Copperheads and you went to OU, which has a great sport management program. He's like, you really need to do one of these grad assistant things. They cover your school. They should have one for the sport management department. And the other student who was sitting there, Jessica, was like, I am the sport management GA and I graduate this semester. So that got me into teaching and doing research. I interviewed with them, got the GA position. My one faculty member, Dr. DePrano, she was going off to do some research for the Paralympics in London. I was able to get into the classroom right away, start teaching some of the sport management classes. And originally, Mario, the faculty were like, whoa, this guy's never taught before. He can't teach the classes for 2 or 3 weeks. So after the first class session, they just stopped showing up. They're really impressed with my lesson plans and activities. And while I was at Dayton, that's one thing that they did a really good job in the MBA program. But I would also say Dr. DePrano and Dr. Teitelbaum were really focused on how do we get our students ready for the workforce? How do we get them out there networking? How do we get them establishing their brand so that they could go to any city and then get a job? So that's really what started me off with, I would say, some of the networking and professionalism skills, as well as the personal branding. And then during my time in my PhD program, got more of like a branding focus and marketing focus. But when I got to Eastern Kentucky University, I was able to continue some of that work with Dr. Teitelbaum and also Dr. Lee Allison, who's now at Texas A&M. So that's one of my areas that I focus on, is figuring out how do you figure out what your identity is? How do you find like the jobs or career opportunities that you want? But then also, how do you make a meaningful impact throughout your life, right? Something that's valuable and important to you.
That's awesome. And I wonder, like, I don't want to answer this for you, but like thinking about, how sports marketing influenced your interest in consumer behavior, I'm also thinking about personal branding. Like, I think some of the things that, as a sports fan, that I love the most, right, is the personal stories,
Mm-hmm.
connecting with people and like particular teams. I mean, I'm a big Lakers fan, right? The stories of people in Los Angeles, like did that play into it? Like when you're, I'm like your interest in personal branding at the when you're working for that sports team?
That's definitely a component of it, Mario. And what I would say is really good marketers and even like people who have really good, strong personal brands, they've got a really good story to tell, right? Those are the ones that we remember. They differentiate themselves. Like if we're thinking about products or companies, they're able to easily differentiate themselves from other competitors in the marketplace. But a lot of times that allows us to create like a strong tie with whoever we're trying to communicate that information to. So I think a lot of times in sports, we do have some unique storylines, whether it's like the rivalry between two teams or maybe a team that's able to turn around from the previous season and now they're the underdog and they're working their way through the playoffs, right? Or maybe it's an athlete that's gone through some type of hardship or tragedy and they've been able to turn things around through that self improvement. And I feel like a lot of times people like that underdog story and gets a lot of backing. But we also see too the dynasty teams, right? The ones that just seem impossible to beat and they just win championship after championship after championship. So I think there's a lot of different storylines that you're able to tell, but figuring out like who you are as an individual, as well as I would say those teams, what do you want your team identity to be? Like what makes you different? What makes you unique? What are you trying to work towards, right? All of those things create some type of intrigue with like your fan base in sports marketing. But in general, I would say for consumers, right, as they're trying to figure out what products they want, or even employers, what employees do they want to be a part of their organization?
So this is a great segue into what is personal branding. I know we just jumped into it. I think many of us, I've had my own journey as an entrepreneur with personal branding, but I think before I dived into it, and it's great, this is the first time I talked to an expert. I think most of us just kind of think it's selfies and some cool
Mm-hmm.
videos and maybe some tweets. Like, what is it? What? How do you define personal branding from from an educational level, research perspective? Like, how would you give the elevator pitch for personal branding?
Absolutely. So Mario, even to take a step back, I would say just focusing in on branding for like your audience. Branding is just imbuing some type of characteristics on an object. So thinking of just products when you hear like, oh, there's this brand, whether it's an actual like item that you're purchasing or the company or the individual, we're just trying to give some type of characteristics or attributes that you now associate with that individual, that product, that company. And the idea is that we're trying to differentiate or stand out positively in the marketplace. So a lot of times what's utilized is what's called signaling theory. So with signaling theory, we're trying to communicate like who we are, what we represent, and we're able to do that through a number of different ways, right? So if I'm like a sports fan, maybe I'm wearing my favorite team's hat, right? Or if I'm really into exercising, working out, maybe I wear more like athleisure or athletic clothing, right? When I'm around different places. So we have the opportunity to change and shift some of those things through our face-to-face interactions, but we're also able to do those things online. So as far as personal branding goes, that's just going to be having those characteristics that we're going to be, signaling out to others in the marketplace. But we decide at the end of the day who we are, right? What we're trying to achieve, what is our current self, but also what's like the future self that we're trying to get to. And I think through changes through like our daily lives and our routines online and in person, you're able to shift or change that perception over time to hopefully get to that desired end goal.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that stuck out in the conversation, and kind of, I know I'm getting in the weeds, but like you mentioned who you want to be. I thought about values. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, what are some exercises that we can take? Because I think it gets, ironically, it's really difficult to be like, oh, here's who I want to be. And, you know, the message starts to get lost in terms of, yeah, the clothes you wear or what you believe in. I mean, what's an exercise one can do to really get down like, hey, these are my values and here's the steps I'm going to take to promote myself in that way. I mean, that's something that I did. Um, is there kind of a guideline you give students when you're talking to them about personal branding, about how do you create a foundation that for what your persona is going to be online? Like, where do you start?
Absolutely. And Mario, this is an activity that I do with my students in class. We actually just did it for my class last week. But this is something your listeners could do right now. So all you've got to do is just get out a regular, sheet of paper and turn it into a trifold so that when you fold it, you've got three different columns within there. So on the left-hand column, what you want to focus on is going to be your current self. So in that column, you would want to be writing down, who am I? What do some of my friends and family members say about me? How would they describe me? What are some words or adjectives to describe the person that I am? Right? So all this needs to be reflection in that first column on the left-hand side as to who you are currently, how others would describe you, what do you look like? But I would also say, responding, what are the activities that you like to do? What do you really enjoy? So getting to some of those values you're talking about, Mario, is even if you're trying to get to a future self, a certain goal, you need to figure out who you are right now, what's important to you, how do others view you, but how do you view yourself? In that middle column, what I would say for the listeners, after you've gone through those questions to describe yourself, you want to start thinking about your future self. So a lot of times in like consumer behavior, you're thinking about like this future self may be something that you're striving for, maybe 5-10 years down the road. It doesn't need to be something that's, oh, I'm going to make this quick change. It's going to take a while to get to there. But you want to think about, who do you want to become? What are your personal or professional goals that you have set for yourself? What's important to you? Right? So with that middle column, it needs to be more future focused as to, where do I want to see myself 5 years from now? What does that future me look like personally and professionally? And then in the column on the right hand side, this is going to be more of your like trends. What's going on in the marketplace today? So are there any cool trends that a lot of people are into right now? Is there new technology? Are there things that there's large groups of people that are into, right? So with this last column, this is less about you, but you want to be thinking about what's going on in society that may be impacting you currently or potentially your future self, like understanding new marketplace technology, things that are going on in your career or industry that you want to work in. And then once you've got all those three columns together, I usually have students just circle and try and find connections, like draw lines to be able to connect each of the areas. Because a lot of times those trends, whether it's new technology or things that people are into or skills that are really high demand, those can help get you from your current self to your future self. And during that 5 or so year time window, you need to be working on developing those skills or figuring out, how do I use this technology? Or if this is something that's really big right now, how do I become an expert in this space? If this is something that matches with my values or really fascinates me and I'm curious about it, those are going to be things that can really help you. And they don't need to necessarily be things that you're doing right now for your employment or things that you do like constantly as activities, but they may be things that you want to work for or work towards for that future self.
Yeah, and I'm trying to connect it. A lot of our audience, well, many entrepreneurs, which I think is hugely relevant.
Yes.
Many people working in large organizations, either marketing, insights, and I want to get into your research a little bit. Maybe this touches on it, maybe it doesn't. But one thing I've noticed is that personal branding now is so important for the success of companies. I mean, you think about major CEOs, right? Like, I mean, Tim Cook, um, Sundar Pichai, like all these people are thinking about personal branding, and as are non CEOs or non executive positions. Um, I don't know. My question is like, I guess how or how why has personal branding become so important? Because this is, I feel like, a fairly new development. And when I say fairly new, I don't know, maybe past 10 years. Like it's such a critical part of not only personal success, but now I feel like company success and for some points, right?
Yes, and I think, Mario, it's been around for a while because even in like the consumer behavior literature, there were for to human brands, or even if we think about like celebrities, celebrity brands, whether it's like sports athletes, musicians, actors, actresses, politicians, whatever it might be. So there has been some work in this space, but I think it's really increased in magnitude, probably a lot because of the digital technology that's available, because we're able to, I would say most consumers now are able to reach a really, really large audience in a very short amount of time, right? Through these different online social networking sites and platforms, versus prior to that, it's really going to be difficult to reach that large of an audience. You can build your reputation and your brand within your local community. And I think that's important to figure out. And I would say that for your listeners, figure out like within your community, what is your brand and reputation amongst the people there? Because a lot of times that's where you can make the most immediate impact, is local, right? And especially within the organization that you're working or the places that you're volunteering. How do I create a positive, personal brand here, show off my skill set so that I'm able to, level up and get some of those opportunities to advance throughout my career? But I think with this the increased digital technology, we have more, Mario, what are called fluid consumers. These are individuals that have access to mobile smart technology, which in the US is very prominent, but I would also say globally, many consumers have access to it. I would say most. So this allows them to be able to search for information at just about any time, and then they're able to make product decisions, right? Form, I would say they're able to form opinions about different brands of celebrities and people that are online influencers. And they're also able to make purchases very quickly too, right? Because now with the global supply chain, they're able to purchase products from all around the world. And it's very easy with some of our payment methods to just, tap and click. And now we've got that shipped to our house the next day, right? So with all of this going on, people have the ability, and I think that's why we see a lot of Gen Z consumers say their number one job right now is social media influencer. So they have the ability to be able to create their brand, promote it online. But to your earlier point, I think it's a lot more valuable for those individuals if they figure out, what's important for me, right? Who am I, and having that authenticity through some of the exercises and practices of figuring out what their values are and what kind of impact they want to make on the world. Because otherwise, once it starts becoming inauthentic, their followers start figuring that out. I think they find it to be more of like a task or a job, and they're not doing these things as meaningful or impactful in their lives. And it doesn't, at the end of the day, deliver on their key value proposition, right? What are we here for? Why are we trying to make an impact, right? Is it just to get 1,000 likes, right? Or get, thousands of impressions? Or am I truly trying to make a difference within my community or in a larger context, society as a whole?
Yeah, and you touched on something I wanted to talk about, which is authenticity. And
Mm-hmm.
you've done research on it, right? Like on personal branding, how it connects with things like authenticity, confidence, even self-actualization. For listeners who maybe aren't aware of the paper, can you kind of walk us through some of the core ideas in a simple way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a research article with some of my other co-authors for the Journal for Advancement of Marketing Education. And at least from our study that we had done with students, we had found that if you believe in your brand and you're confident in your brand, that allows you to find your true authentic personal brand, which leads to more self-actualization. So the reason that this is a key insight or finding is it's important for students, but I would say outside of the student context, it's important for professionals or people in general to figure out who am I really, get confident with who you want to be and what your personal brand would look like, actually believe in what that is. And that will allow you to find your true self. So when we were talking about earlier, Mario, what are your values? What's important to you? If you're able to figure that out and weave it into your daily activity and I would say that align it with the goals that you're striving for, that's going to lead you more to that self-actualization. What's my purpose here? What am I trying to work towards, right? We're all here for a short period of time. So if we're going to try and leave our mark or leave the world a better place than how we found it, we want to be doing activities and things on a daily basis and make that a part of who we are and signal that out, right, to our communities, to society as a whole. And that will actually allow us to have a more fulfilling life. And I think that's important to a lot of people right now, is trying to figure out what am I here for? How am I able to make a difference or an impact? So if they actually believe in what they're doing, right, and they're confident in it, that's going to lead to them doing more, I think, authentic personal branding promotions, and then overall leave a more fulfilling life as a whole.
I love that because you're getting to something that's really difficult, right? I mean, and that's really at the core of authenticity if you think about it, right? Like, what am I doing here? What do I want to accomplish? Um, and if you could stay true to that, I mean, that is authentic.
And that's not something, Mario, that's a really difficult thing to get to. So that self-actualization, that's coming from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that's the highest level of need from Maslow's chart, right? So with that, I don't think that's something even for your listeners, you're not going to be able to figure that out today or tomorrow. I mean, this is you going through and thinking what's really important to me? What really provides me fulfillment, right? Where are the areas that I want to make a contribution to? And I think a number of us have been in situations where, you're working a job just to work a job to have the income, but maybe you're actually doing your fulfilling thing outside of that. Maybe it's a group that you're volunteering with, right? Maybe it's a way that you're giving back to the community. Maybe you are able to reposition yourself to find a career path where you're saying, you know what, I am really making a difference. And this is something that makes me feel really good, but I'm also seeing the results with the people that I'm impacting as a result of my work. So I would say for your listeners, sometimes it can be difficult because you may say, you know what, I'm in a system right now where I'm just not feeling like I'm making an impact, or I'm having a hard time figuring out like what's my purpose. Take some of those small steps to figure out like what you value or what really gives you that energy, right? It fills up your well-being so that you're able to go out and make some of those wins during your volunteer time or maybe through a career shift. But that self-actualization doesn't come quickly. I think that's something that's learned over the years, and you're able to better position your time and yourself as a whole towards that as you're going through that learning process of yourself.
I agree, and I can share a little bit of a personal story on that front. As a company, right, we've been around for almost 15 years, coming in February. Um, and as a market research company, we, our branding when we first launched was like very professional, very corporate. We wanted to give off an air of um, just completely data driven,
Mm-hmm.
which we are. Um, but my co-founder and I are passionate about social issues, multiculturalism, um, the importance of immigrants to our economy, et cetera. And we, we never really bled our personal beliefs and values into the company for probably the first, I don't know, 8 to 10 years of the company. But we grew, and knock on wood, we grew over that time. But where we really saw a difference is when we did start to infuse more of our values into the company.
Mm-hmm.
And not only did we grow, it became more interesting and fun for me, right? To research things that I'm interested in and speak about. And so, yeah, I can, those listening, I can tell you it is a journey. It was, 10 years before we really started talking. But when we figured it out and we're still tweaking it, it really grew our company and also our personal selves as founders, which was, speaking directly to what you're talking about.
Absolutely. And Mario, as like the leader of your organization, a lot of times that can help like create a strong corporate culture, right, in environment within your organization to attract employees that, share some of those similar values, right? And then you are able to work collaboratively towards those goals. But even a number of companies too, I feel like they give their employees a lot of, flexibility and opportunities to volunteer where it may be, hey, you've got like 40 hours over, this year, and we want you to just go volunteer during that time. You figure out what's important to you. Maybe it's Big Brothers Big Sisters, maybe it's Susan G. Komen Foundation, maybe it's I don't know, any type of organization that matters to you. And that allows some of those employees to be like, you know what, this is a way that I'm able to give back. My company supports this. I really care about this. But I think a lot of times, if that's something that really drives your organization, having some of those like key values as part of your mission and your vision as a group, that kind of drives the whole company towards that and definitely leads a more fulfilling life.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't even touch on that, but 100%, it did help our team get better. We were just attracting talent, people randomly reaching out to me on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I really like that post. Do you guys have any positions open?"
Mm-hmm.
And those types of hires are really the best type of hires because they reached out proactively, right? And that they're a culture fit, and if you don't have a culture,
Mm-hmm.
not culture fit is impossible. But when you have a really strong culture, you start to attract people that are mission driven, and the company just grows organically, which is great.
Absolutely. So even taking it from instead of like the consumer focus, but you think of it more of like the employees and organizational behavior, you want those employees that are buying in to like, this is why I'm here. This is what's important. And I think for a lot of your listeners too, if you find a company that really matches what your values are, that makes it, a lot easier because you're excited to go to work every day, right? This is something where I'm able to make an impact. Like I see the difference that we're making as a result of what we're doing. So it provides, I would say, a lot of fulfillment, but a lot of energy too, right? You're not like, oh no, I've got to go work again today, or right, this is going to be a rough one. You're excited, and I think that makes things makes people a lot more productive. But I don't know, at least for me and my career path, Mario, I know this is something teaching that I get really excited when I go into the classroom, and I love seeing the difference that I'm making in students' lives. And I know one of our former faculty members, Jack Dyer, he had said, we change lives for the better." And I can see that every day with how we're working with our students, developing their business skills, setting them up for success, but not just in the area of business, but we're trying to set them up to be leaders, right? In their communities and the organizations that we're working for, and want them to promote positive change. And I know, at least with my career path, that's something where sometimes they go, you know what if I would have stuck with Reynolds and Reynolds and didn't do that grad assistantship, right? And I was working in the corporate world. Would I really feel as much like energy and excitement and impact that I'm feeling now? And I'm not sure because I didn't go that route, but I can tell that, through the years that I've done this, I've really enjoyed my time working with the students, doing the research, and the autonomy to be able to give back to my community in so many different ways. Just it feels really, really powerful, and I really value that, at least with our institution here at EKU.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I do love it. Made me think about there's a lot of chatter on LinkedIn, right, about working with Gen Z, and
Hmm.
it's typically negative, unfortunately. But it's connected to this conversation, and that I think one of the issues maybe some leaders have with Gen Z is that they bring their whole selves to work. They want their work to be aligned with their beliefs and values. And, you see many managers push back, like, we don't talk about that here. We don't. But
Hmm.
I think it's a good thing for society. I think it's a good thing that Gen Z is like, hey, I'm not going to separate my beliefs or values or what I'm passionate about just because I'm at this job. Um, I don't know. I just a comment on that. I mean, do you see that in the classroom where like that tendency for this generation to want to bring their whole selves even in a business environment?
So we actually just did an activity, Mario, in my class on this. Maybe I think it was 2 weeks ago or so, but we talked about we've got really four generations in the workforce because the baby boomers are sticking around longer than previous generations. So we've got the baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and we got Gen Z. So they all, and we talked about like each of these groups have different values, right? They've had different lived experiences. They have different ways that they like to do things. So we kind of talked through, how do you view these different generations? How do they view you? And it was interesting to hear because a lot of times it's negative things. And I feel like a lot of times with the media and the news, it's like this generation's lazy or this one's just, not sharing the power, or this one, it's a lot of blame, blame, blame. And I think the key thing through the exercise was we wanted to show that there are differences between the generational cohorts, right? These are made somewhat arbitrary, these generational cohorts, right? They say at this point, you're now going from one age cohort to the other. But a lot of times they have shared lived experiences, technology that they've been introduced to, values and things that they've been through. But at the end of the day, we're all people, right? And if we're working for that company, and to your earlier point, Mario, this is what we talked about, and that we have similar values and beliefs, and we're all mission focused and mission driven, right? And we're buying into that purpose. We should find a lot more of that commonality based off of like our psychographics, which are more of our like lifestyle choices, things that we're interested in, what we do on a daily activity, what we value. And I think through that part of the discussion with the students, a lot of them were like, oh, yeah, I talk with this person because they're really into sports. And then I help this person with this technology at work, and they help me with this new system that I never used before. Right. And I think a lot of times when we find that common ground, it's like we have so much that's in common when we, break down those news barriers of like, this group's bad, this one's not doing good, this one doesn't work as hard. Right. That ends up leading to us like reaching our goals, being more productive and successful, and having a lot of success in the marketplace. And don't get me wrong, each generation's got their pros and cons. And I think there's things that we want to work on with the Gen Z consumers, right, as they're Gen Z students, as they're going through their higher education process. But each of those age cohorts has had their challenges, especially as they're going through their training to be in the workforce, but then also be successful in their career paths.
Yeah, that's a positive tidbit I was hoping to hear, and that's great to hear that there is more in common, right? Like,
Yes.
it is pretty fascinating, though. I've never heard anyone mention how there is essentially four generations in the workforce right now. It
Hmm.
feels like that's got to be a first in history, because I that seems unprecedented in terms of, and I mean, it's multiple reasons, right? We're living longer,
Yes.
um, we're retiring later, so
Yep.
I wonder if it's gonna. I'm sure there's gonna be a brief moment there. There's gonna be five generations, because Gen Alpha's.
Hmm.
I mean, I think some of the older Gen Alpha is graduating college, right? I don't know.
Well, I believe they're still in primary school, but you figure some of them, may start to work part-time jobs soon. So yes, it is possible that we start having those different age cohorts. So it's trying to figure out like how do we have all of these groups, working together successfully. But I think Mario, what you're alluding to at the beginning, you may have somebody that's a manager that maybe is in like the baby boomer generation, and they're trying to figure out like, how do I connect with this individual that has gone through like different experiences than me? They're more or less familiar with different, workplace professionalism skills. Maybe they have a different perception of it. Actually, this might be a good example, Mario. The one example we did in class was usually I'll try and talk about perceptions with consumer behavior. So we talk about different products. The product that I usually like to bring up is tattoos. So with tattoos, we talk about, okay, think about your parents, whether it was Gen X or the baby boomers. How do they view tattoos, right? So they give their feedback, right? And again, they're making some larger generalizations about like the age cohort, but usually they have more negative perceptions as to what they are and what they look like. And then I talk about, well, how do you all view them, right? And a lot of times they talk about, well, we view them more positively. They may be more like of an artistic impression, or maybe it's to commemorate like some memory or key moment for us, or a lost loved one, or whatever it might be. So they hold a lot of value in that product, and they see it as something positive and important to them. And this is all in the context of like workforce, right? So then I talk about, well, you all view this positively. What do you all feel about, face tattoos? And then that perception changes, right? So they say, well, that's not something I would get. I wouldn't hire someone with that. It's negative. And then we talk about, so we're in Kentucky, and there a lot of people follow like University of Kentucky basketball here, right? They bleed blue. So we talk about Willie Cauley-Steins. He's an NBA basketball player, played at University of Kentucky. He has multiple face tattoos. He's an NBA player, seen very positively by, I would say, people within Kentucky. We talk about different musical celebrities that have face tattoos and becoming more mainstream. And then we talk through in our example, if you're in Gen Z, you may see this as something that's acceptable. I see a lot of athletes, I see a lot of celebrities, musicians, artists. That age cohort could say, you know what, that is acceptable in the workplace. That is something I would get. I am more interested in this product, right? Or we could see that pendulum shift all the way back the other way and say, you know what, I'm Gen Alpha. I don't want any tattoos. I want this. I don't want this product. I'm not interested in it. So these are just like perceptions of the product and preferences that shift within our culture over time. But it's important for them to realize, even for their age cohort, something they think is okay, but then it's not okay, right? We're at the point where it kind of shifts for them depending on where that product is placed.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you're pointing out um, there is something in common. Maybe a baby boomer's like no tattoos,
Hmm.
and Gen Z is like, well, yeah, but you both agree, yeah, maybe not face tattoos, So that's some commonality there. Now this has been really good. Believe it or not, we're almost at our time here. And a fun little segment I'd like to do at the end is talk about maybe what you're reading, any interesting books, podcasts, or even shows. It could be related to your work, maybe something that inspired you recently, or something you're just consuming to take a break from work stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, Mario. So the one book I actually just got done reading a few weeks ago is Relationship Rich Education, and it's by Peter Felton and Leo Lambert. Um, for your audience, I would say it is geared towards educators, but I feel like it could be a really good read for anyone because it talks about the importance, especially in undergraduate education, of faculty members creating relationships with their students so that you're able to fill more of that like mentorship role, and it doesn't feel like they are a number in a sea of students, right? And that's where we really get some of those like higher levels of Bloom taxonomy learning, where the students are able to develop their skills, they're able to push further. And when you're talking about entrepreneurship, they're able to get feedback from their faculty members on maybe business ideas, ways to be able to make improvements to different systems that are in place. And I think through this like mentoring, relationship focused education model, that's really how you can get a lot out of education. But I would say for your listeners that are in the workforce, figuring out how can I create relationships with my coworkers, my supervisors, my subordinates, how do I get to know them on a more individualized basis, and figuring out like what is their personal brand, what is their identity, what are some of their career goals and aspirations, how can I help them reach those, how can I communicate what is important to me to those stakeholders so they can help me reach my personal career goals, can go a really long way. But if we view it more of like, oh, I'm just like a number in this really big system, that's when you don't have as many of those connections and you're not able to reach your goals. Outside of the book, though, Mario, I did have one quick story I want to tell and piece of advice, maybe for your listeners too, as far as personal branding and networking. So when I first started attending conferences, Dr. Teitelbaum from the University of Dayton was my mentor and still is. And he gave me some really good advice when I first started to go. And he said, get as much as you can out of those conferences and networking events. So go to all the different sessions, network, go to the receptions, meet with people. But before you even go, figure out who's presenting and figure out who you want to talk to. Who are the people that you want to meet? So I know when I was going through my doctoral program at the University of Rhode Island, they had a conference called the Academy of Marketing Science. It's one of our better marketing conferences. And one of our graduates, Patty Norberg, who's at Quinnipiac University, she was going to be presenting there. And I knew I wanted to get to know Patty. I know that she was one of our superstar graduates. She was an editor of one of our A-level marketing journals. So I made it a purpose to go watch her presentation and then afterwards go talk to her. And when I talked with her and about her research, what she had done after graduation, she had let me know, she's like, I've got this paper and with my journal and I can't find a reviewer for it. It's on this new topic, brand love. Will you try reviewing this paper for me? And with that, I took a chance and I said, yes, give me a shot at it, Patty. I'll go review it for you. And at least with these reviews, Mario, you go through, you learn the literature, you provide feedback on that. And then afterwards, you give a recommendation, accept, revise, reject. So I did that. I got it in early. And then Patty was like, you did such a good job with this review. It was so thorough. I'd like you to review another paper. And then it was another paper. So by the time I started at Eastern Kentucky University, I was able to join the editorial review board for an A-level journal, which is very difficult to do. And even with that, kept getting the reviews on time, kept networking, kept connecting with her. I was able to get on as an associate editor for that A-level journal. So what I would say for your listeners is, for your personal brand, and whenever you're out, whether it's professional development events, networking conferences, but I would say your everyday life, figure out who it is that you really want to connect with. So we talked about your current self, future self. How do you get to that future self? Sometimes it's like the people that are the influencers that you need to get connected with and know. How can I do some work for them? How can I do that work really well? How can I show off my skill sets to them? How can I be associated with their brand or the brands that they're connected with, right? And if I'm putting in that effort and I'm putting in those results, I'm going to get more and more opportunities moving forward. And how do I leverage that to be a part of my personal brand in the future? Everybody's capable of doing that. And I think especially through volunteering activities, or even if you're reaching out to people at work, who wouldn't want somebody else to help out on that team project or take some of the workload off their plate, right? And if you're able to follow through, meet those deadlines and give a good quality result, a lot of great opportunities can happen for that. So I'm really thankful for Patty that she gave me that opportunity. And I know as I continue as an associate editor, I don't want to let her down because I know she took a chance on me. But I also know in my position now as assistant dean, I've taken the chance on a few other people too to help develop their skills. And when they've given me really good results, I've been able to give them more opportunities moving forward too.
That's fantastic advice because I think many people, including myself, tend think about personal branding as our online persona. But
Mm-hmm.
what your story highlights is really at the end of the day, you could build a great online persona and connect it with your values, but you got to reach out to people. You got to make those
Yes.
connections, whether it's volunteering in your community, like you mentioned, going to conferences that you're interested or people you want to connect with, or at your job, water cooler conversations, connecting with people where you want to be, maybe a project that you're not assigned to, but like you mentioned, put your talents there saying that you're open to help. I think that's a really great reminder for all of us. Thank you. Um,
Absolutely.
this has been an awesome conversation. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey and your insights. Really been a masterclass, and I got a lot out of it from a personal branding perspective. If listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way to learn more about your research and what you're doing at Eastern Kentucky?
Yeah, absolutely, Mario. So I would say the platforms I'm most active on are LinkedIn and X, and you can follow me at Mr. Marketing PhD. Those are probably the best places. And if you want to find some of my research, if you go on Google Scholar and just search for Dr. James Blair on there, Eastern Kentucky University, you should be able to access a few of my articles there on personal branding and some of the other topics I cover.
Awesome. Thanks again, and thank you everybody for listening. Thanks to everyone listening in. To get more multicultural insights, Check us out at thinknow.com and follow us on social media. You can also subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform.